Welcome to the EXCELcast. My name is Mark Clegg. I'm Director of Entrepreneurship and Career Services here at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. And I'm here with two members of the Prism Quartet. Welcome back. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Matthew Levy and Timothy McAllister. Tim is one of my colleagues here at the University of Michigan, and Matt teaches at Temple and UPenn. So it's great to have you here and to sort of announce the foundation of ZOS Records.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what prompted you to create your own record label?
Well, Prism has recorded over our 32-year history for many, many labels, and we got to a point where we sort of internalized a lot of the knowledge and information needed to mount our own record label. And there are many benefits to doing it, and we decided that we wanted to sort of take that on as an organization, because we have an infrastructure since we're a nonprofit, so we have the capacity to do the same things that a typical record label would do.
Mm-hmm. So ZOS Records is just sort of a subsidiary or a part of your overall nonprofit?
Yeah, it's a program of Prism Quartet Incorporated.
We have your first release here
Yes.
for this project, right?
Yeah.
It's just hot off the press, right?
Exactly.
And I guess this speaks to the sort of project-based work that you do as a group. So when you think of a project, do you think of a recording as sort of part of that?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we produce our own concert series, which is now in Philadelphia, New York City, and Ann Arbor. Mm-hmm. And each of those programs we conceive of thematically, and with the idea that we'll often go into recording studios at the conclusion of them and get everything in the can for a release. And so this project, for example, was the culmination of residency at the Curtis Institute, mm-hmm. in which we commissioned one of their faculty members and 5 of their students to write music for us. And those pieces were sort of accompanied by Jennifer Higdon's major saxophone quartet called Short Stories. So we thought that would be a really wonderful recording.
A great way to start out. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Jennifer's music,
Yeah.
but the Josquin microludes I thought are particularly fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
David Ludwig, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, he's a dear friend of the quartet and wrote a piece that is really evocative and beautifully integrates early music in quotation, sort of alternating with his own more contemporary language. Mm-hmm. And so there's he describes it as channel surfing between old and new music. It's a really beautiful piece.
Yeah, it's compelling.
Yeah.
So what does it take to found a record label? I mean, do you just put up a Facebook page and say, hey, here we are, or what do you do?
I mean, it sort of depends where you are in your evolution
Mm-hmm.
as a artist or organization. For Prism, we had already been providing all of the materials needed by a record label. We mostly record with Innova Records, which is a label of the American Composers Forum.
Another very artist-friendly.
Yes, very artist-friendly, and we love them. They're fabulous. But we would provide them with the master recording, all of the artwork. We would hire our own publicist, and they would take on certain administrative roles, and they were sort of, they had their own distributor, Nexus, and they have some manpower to do a lot of the kind of legwork and help promote it. But in the end, we just thought it would be more productive from our point of view to work directly with a major distributor, because we were already sort of doing so much of the work. So we reached out to Nexus, and they knew Prism from years of distributing our records through Innova, and we signed a contract with them, a 3-year international distribution contract that will enable us to have exactly the same exposure and distribution as we had with Innova. Mm-hmm. So that's, and the benefit is that we, there are certain administrative fees associated with even a label like Innova that we can now use towards marketing and public relations rather than paying a label and administrative fee. So there's a savings for us. Mm-hmm. that is really important.
So you can target your resources into something very specific.
Exactly.
Right? So what does publicity mean today? Is it press releases? Is it YouTube videos? I mean, how do you get attention? I mean, it's such a overpacked mediascape, right? Hard to break through.
Media is changing constantly. I think it's been a challenge for orchestras, chamber music ensembles, universities, when we think about just the evolving role of media. So for us, we took to that quite a bit. About close to 10 years ago, we started to become much more active just with email blasts and developing graphics-based advertising for emails. But then we had a publicist when we did our 25th anniversary season. Is that right? When we had that season, we hired a publicist for that year, who works with Prism Quartet and many other groups, and he just kept on us about Twitter. I remember that's all he talked about was Twitter. You got to keep those tweets coming, he would say, and we took that to heart, and it really did translate into better reach for our materials.
And Twitter's interesting because a lot of journalists, a lot of people who are in the arts world are watching Twitter.
Yeah.
So if you're there, you actually can reach a lot of critics, a lot of newspaper writers. Those are the people who are really watching, and those, of course, are the people that will influence other people.
Yeah. We also advertise on Facebook, and that's great because you can target your, audience in a way that you can't
Pick
do.
saxophone players around the globe.
So we do that for our concerts. So we have a concert tomorrow in Ann Arbor, so we took out an ad that targets people that like new music and saxophone and
Jazz.
and anything, other groups that have we list names of other ensembles that are similar to Prism in that target. So all of their fans. So you can really, use your money in a smart way rather than in the old days where you just put an ad in a paper that 99.9% of the people might not take interest in your specific concert. But with social media, it's really possible to
You can target people who are interested in music,
exactly,
other musicians.
yeah, your kind of core fan base.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love about your new album is just the sound. I mean, I think you really capture the sound of the quartet. Maybe, Tim, can you talk a little bit about what you've learned over the years about recording the saxophone? I mean, what mics you use, or where they're placed, or how many, or?
It is truly a process, a trial and error process. You learn as you go, and you can sometimes learn from failed projects, or not necessarily failed projects, but situations in which you didn't capture that sound the way you wished, and you have time to reflect upon that. And I think most people would look back at early recordings of themselves and pick them apart for various reasons, whether it's the playing or just the quality of the recording. But over time, and Matt talked about this at the EXCEL talk we did this week, just about acquiring microphones and understanding the difference between a $200 microphone and maybe a $1,000 microphone or a $5,000 microphone. That starts to make a big difference. And then just knowing acoustically what works best for us, the distance, the placement, the kind of space we need to be in to sound our best.
So do you record in the same place every time, or do you choose the place based on the project?
Well, I think we would prefer more traditional chamber music being played in a more resonant recital space. We have done pure studio projects. We've done many pure studio projects. And most of those will really cater towards maybe the newest music, maybe something that's a little more austere in sound. And then there's more possibilities maybe for even editing in those situations, because you're not dealing with room noise or resonance in the space. But sometimes those recordings for us, we have felt, come off a little cold sounding, maybe a little dry. No matter how hard you work, you have to do it all artificially to create a very mixed sound or a very beautiful, warm sound that has to be created through studio magic in some ways. And so that's why we prefer to be in a concert hall space now.
And one thing you guys do is you hire the recording engineer, but then you do a lot of the editing yourself, right? So one of the things I'm wondering about is, what skills does a student today need to really develop? And it sounds like a knowledge of microphones, sort of behind the scenes, how recording works, but also editing. How did you learn to do editing, man?
I'm self-taught, basically. On our first recording, way back in 1990, I remember digital editing was just kind of coming in, and I thought it was pretty cool. Someone can take a sound wave, and just organize them, and wow, I want to learn how to do that. And so just through years of acquired knowledge, little by little, But now, in school there are opportunities to learn Pro Tools, and you can. For me, it was kind of learning by attrition, like learning what I needed to learn as I went, and still learning, But we basically hire top-notch session engineers who really have all the great equipment, because it's not only the microphone, but it's the preamplifier, which colors the microphone. It's it's the audio converter, which converts it from analog to digital. The entire process of getting it into a digital format, the sound has to go through a number of steps. So that equipment is incredibly expensive, and we, as an organization, we rather invest in people that own it, that can bring their expertise. And then I take those recordings to my home studio where I use Pro Tools to edit it together, mix it, and do the mastering. So it's, you know, that helps Prism. I mean, it's a savings for Prism because that part of the post-production process is incredibly expensive also. So I sort of am able to kind of donate those services, and that's enabled Prism to release quite a few CDs over the last years, you know.
So again, you can focus your resource on the high-quality recording,
Yeah.
get the great source tape, and then you can do the sort of do-it-yourself work behind the scenes.
Yeah, we had a recording of music by William Albright, and some of the pieces on that recording, we use these microphones, Rode NT2s, which are fine microphones, but they're maybe $200 microphones. And we didn't really understand the difference. I didn't appreciate the, you know, the value of really getting top-notch equipment. So, you know, if you compare like the audio quality of that recording versus the Curtis project, you'll hear like just the difference between just capturing the acoustic kind of clarity and beauty of sound that's possible through microphone and selection and equipment. Yeah.
So Tim, you released your first recording, right, when you were still an undergrad. When do you think for a student is sort of too early, or when's the best time for them to start thinking about recording and putting their stuff out there?
Well, your recording is your brand. Any recording you have of yourself is your brand, especially instrumentalists, and of course singers and whatnot too. But you have to know, you have to have a good sense of when you're ready to put yourself out there and to open yourself up to that kind of scrutiny and that type of observation in some ways. And I felt with the pianist I was working with at the time, we felt that upon completing some of my degree recitals that it would be nice to just document the experience and maybe just put it out there and see what happens. And it was a risk at the time. We felt that the product held up pretty well with what was out there, with the overall standard within the profession. And we just decided to go into the studio following a major recital and put it all down with the hopes of promoting materials or creating marketing materials, demo recordings, if you will, to send out to presenters and concert series so that we could start to play. And little by little, we built that project, built that recording, and decided to market it as an entire album and fished it around to a few labels, and one was very emphatically interested, Centaur Records, and we were going to add William Bolcom's piece to that, Lilith, a piece from 1984, and they decided that they wanted the project. So.
Well, these days students can do a lot of that on their own. They don't need a recording company.
I know.
YouTube and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So
it's all changed. I think when a student feels that they're ready, hopefully with guidance of a mentor, to get their materials out there, they should. We live in an age where the latest thing and the newest craze takes hold on a viral level, and maybe a student is going to hit it just at the right time and get some attention their way. And that can happen in many ways, not just a straight performance, but maybe the production quality of something they put out there. Maybe the gloss of that will be attractive. Sometimes students will just use that for all kinds of maybe even, well, I don't want to say gimmicks, but they can use it as an important hook. And now there's even music video level performances that are coming out by classical ensembles. You know, they're using YouTube and media in this way.
multiple camera shoots.
Sure.
Pretty fancy production values.
Yeah, I think that's the way of the future in some ways. And the idea of just putting a single camera, in the back of the concert hall and filming your recital, that might have some benefit if it gives you a web presence and if it allows people to find you. But in the end, no one really wants to watch a video that way either. So I think a multi-camera shoot, the sooner a student can do that, the better.
That's great. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously the artistic quality is still the core product, right? No matter how many cameras you get, how fancy the production value is, the quality's got to be there. What have you learned about the experience of recording? You know, how is it different from a live performance, and what can you do in preparation, either in your practice or just, you know, marking the score for edit points, for example, that's going to help you end up with a better product, better recording?
I mean, I would say understanding the technology will impact how you record, you know, how you can find places that are editable and where you might, for example, do some overdubs if there's, for example, if there's a passage where one of the parts is extremely difficult and the other three are not, and that one part might be better done as an overdub, so you would not record it necessarily on the first take, and but you could record it later and drop it over the other parts, as an example. Or various kinds of edits like dovetail editing, where you know, where one part might end, continue before another one starts, and just understanding how you can sort of splice things together. So I think.
So knowing how to use Pro Tools actually affects how you lay down the tracks.
Yeah, when we record, we you know, we'll work through a piece and decide what edits are possible, how much we want to record. It's a combination of artistic decisions based on the structure of the piece and the kind of reality of what's possible in terms of editing. So yeah.
So you mark those edit points like in the music before you even get to the
Oh
recording
yeah,
session.
yeah. So we'll record from rehearsal A to rehearsal B, and the edit is beat 2 of rehearsal, you know, B, and let's play a perfect downbeat there so we can get a good edit. You know, so we're very aware of the edit points, and if we don't get a really good, solid, aligned articulation on those edit points, then that could ruin the whole take. So we're sort of very aware of that as part of the process.
But there has to be the skills to back up that activity. So if we are not sensitive to what we need to do to get the most out of a recording session, as far as intonation or balance or attacks or just sheer technique or rhythm, if those things are a problem, they become almost impossible to just artificially manufacture. We have to make sure that every ounce of data that goes into the hard drive is loaded with artistic integrity. And I think we can't talk about recording as being a substitute for quality. It needs to be something that captures quality, and then we have the ability to further it, to take it to the next level, something that would be on such a high professional level that it's not just good, but it's hopefully the new standard, the new benchmark. So I think we challenge ourselves for every album to be better than the previous, and we challenge ourselves to make every album better than anything that's out there. That's our goal, and we don't always necessarily succeed, but that's our hope, because you never know who's going to be the first person along that continuum or this legacy of recordings. It could be the very most recent recording that someone only hears, or it could be a recording that someone heard that we did 20 years ago, and we hope that holds up. We have to believe it holds up. So from this point forward, we have control artistically and on a technological level. We have control to make every album better than the previous. And that helps with just the evolving skill level of the group, the age of the age of the group, you know, the aging of the group. You know, it allows us to bring a lot of experience and wisdom into our sessions.
Yeah, the recordings are almost sort of idealized versions of pieces, because in live concert, you know, someone will make a mistake somewhere. I mean, it's not, we're human beings, but in the recording process, we really go for, you know, something that has the artistic integrity that Tim talked about, but also, you know, is really flawless. And in a way that helps us as performers, because it sets a standard that we aspire to.
So it advances the goals of the
It
group
does.
and the artistic quality of the group to do recording
It
programs.
does, and I think having gone through a recording process for a piece helps us to hone in on our own performance practice in a certain way. And then hearing that end product, I think, helps us to kind of aspire to that in live performance as well. You know?
Does your personal practice change when you're preparing for a concert versus a recording session, or is it sort of the same thing?
I don't know, Tim.
I would say we definitely attempt to play at a higher level. In live performance, there is at least a bit of a there's always a distance or a detachment from you and the audience. They are not capable of processing ultimately in real time what you're doing if you have something you don't like about your performance. It's something that is very, very internal, something that's very personal, and the performance itself needs to come across as having great confidence and poise, and someone will be inspired to say to you afterwards, that was amazing. And the first thing that goes through your head is, well, I missed this note, or I was out of tune on this note, or I didn't like this attack. And you'll go through this laundry list of problems that you kind of cataloged, which is unfair. It's unfair to yourself, it's unfair to your audience member, because they're ultimately hearing the big picture of what you did. And then, but with recording, it's going to be scrutinized, and it's going to be studied, and it is meant to be enjoyed for generations to come. And I think as a document, it's something that is going to be studied with the score.
Mm-hmm.
So yes,
You can't hide anything.
you can't hide anything, and there's no excuse to allow for problems. And you have to be more prepared when you show up on that, because of the impact and the reach that recording hopefully would have.
So if you're recording a 10-minute piece, how much time do you need in the studio to make that recording be at that level?
10-minute piece can be 6 hours, could be more.
We spend the first maybe 2 to 3 hours just getting a sound kind of that we like. Go through each instrument, record each instrument individually, and listen back and adjust microphone placement. You know, so there's a long process before we even start laying down any of the piece. But yeah, we typically spend a full day on a 10-minute piece.
Wow.
So yeah, so a CD could be a week of recording.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new challenge in terms of concentration. And
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fatigue.
so maybe to wrap up, can you each give us one piece of advice about how you make a recording still have the emotion and the artistry of a live performance, even though you're in this sort of different kind of extended technical
Yeah.
process? How do you keep the passion there in a recording?
You have to treat it almost like an athlete would look at preparing for an entire game. You know, if we talk about a multi-period game, a multi-quarter game or something, what they have to do to pace themselves and be prepared by the end of that when the fatigue is at its highest, its greatest. It's not unlike that, because a session has to be something that's planned out, but on a physical level, we have to be ready for that. Obviously, taking a lot of breaks, hydrating, making sure we have snacks or proper nutrition, make sure we're taking care of ourselves the right way before a session. But in the midst of that session, we have to know what our limits are for that mental saturation, so to speak, what it means to clear that space and then perform at your highest. So what can happen in a series of multiple takes, if you're doing 10, 20 takes of the same thing, there can be a bit of degrading that happens, or degradation. There can be a sense that you're losing track of what you intended to do with that section. So sometimes an engineer will say, when you played it the very first time and when you played it the very last time, it sounded the best. And we may have been searching for that perfect take somewhere around take 8 or 9, but it could be that the very first time we played it had that perfect mixture of ensemble, execution, and passion. And so you need to make sure you don't only search for the take where every note is perfect, and sometimes your idea of perfect is so highly singular and personal that you have to sometimes sacrifice. It was good. Maybe it wasn't the very best that I ever did, but everyone felt pretty good about it, and that in the end, that's what's going to get down.
Yeah. For a chamber group, you know, all four, within the Prism Quartet, you know, the trick is that all four of us play at our best on the same take. So that's something that can be challenging, you know. But I think part of the challenge is also just trying to distance yourself from the idea that someone hit a record button and you are now being recorded for posterity, for the entire world to see. You know, that can be kind of intimidating versus playing a concert. And so trying to sort of get to a mental place where that isn't weighing on you in any way, that you feel comfortable and you're just making music and you're holding yourself.
Keeping it fun.
Yeah, keeping it fun. So I think, and that comes a lot with experience and just doing it a lot and getting comfortable with the setting, the technology, having people you really like working with, both musicians and the engineering and producing team. You know, we actually self-produce, so typically the four of us will jointly come to a consensus about if we liked certain takes, you know. But typically, groups use producers who take on that role, and they can kind of help move things along. And the producer can often kind of stroke the ego of the musicians and help them to feel good and you know, help them to do their best work.
Therapy.
Yeah. So we you know, we try and do that within our own ensemble. But I think it's you know, important to be really positive and create an environment where everyone's feeling good. You know, assuming that, you know, things are going well. You know,
that's important. That's important for students to know, that it takes experience, and you have to understand the environment that you're recording within if you're playing with other people, and it gets better with time, but it needs to be part of a curriculum in some ways. And I think every student should get experience recording themselves and walking away from their education with some kind of document that they're proud of to use for years to come.
Yeah, I would say that the question you raised about when should students record is a good one, and I think Tim really addressed it well. But I also think, regardless of when a student should release a commercial CD, they should be recording themselves while they're at school. They should be taking advantage of the technology and expertise of faculty and students in engineering programs, so they can go in, and they should take advantage of facilities that are available at school. So you can, you know, versus a professional musician who doesn't have access to academic.
It's a lot more expensive.
It's a lot more expensive. So
once you're out of school,
go into, you know, sign out a hall, you know, connect with a good engineering student or faculty, make time to record yourself, and maybe do multi-track recording. Go through the whole process, and you'll learn a lot. And you may not release it, you know, on, you know, commercially, but that will be, it will both document where you're at artistically and give you invaluable experience in terms of looking down the road how you can integrate the whole recording process into your career development.
Well, that's fantastic advice, and congratulations on
Thank
South
you.
Records, and
Yeah.
we're looking forward to tomorrow's concert.
Great,
Thanks
thank you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you.